Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dane, your host. I hope that you're doing great wherever you may find yourselves, and blessings to all of you wonderful people out there. Today's video is about me sharing with you what are my top 20 favorite lineups of all time in rock and metal only. So I'm not going to be talking about fusion or jazz fusion as much as I love that stuff, just sticking to rock and metal so I don't complicate things. No solo artists, just bands. There is no ranking either. Just presenting them to you one at a time. And let's see. And in some, I have to mention this as one of the parameters. In some cases, you'll see that it's a one and done lineup. So length has nothing to do with it. It's just how great the lineup is to me personally. All right, so let's get started. My first band that I'm presenting is Black Sabbath, and the lineup here is, of course, so much of it. What I mean by of course is so many of us, this is our favorite lineup. Can't speak for everyone, of course, but Iommi, Butler, Ward, and Ozzy. So the Ozzy era, the 70s, starting with that wonderful debut through and including Never Say Die. There's a bit of a falling off with the last two albums with Ozzy, but there's still some really cool stuff on there, like Junior's Eyes, Never Say Die. In those last two albums, you have the last album you have some jazz fusion, but Techno Ecstasy has some really cool stuff as well, Rock and Roll Doctor, etc. The first album is a masterpiece, one of the most important debut albums of all time, the beginnings of heavy metal. For so many of us, we believe that, and I do as well. Then you get the second album, which is even better than the first. The first album, very much blues-based with the harmonica on the Wizard and just the overall vibe and tone. But then you get, branching off into extended suites, if you will. Bill Ward, what makes this lineup so great is Bill Ward is essentially a jazz drummer in a rock heavy metal band. So they're still earthy, if you get my pun, with that first album. And then the second album, you get into more hard rock, metal, psychedelic metal because of things like Planet Caravan and Electric Funeral and Hand of Doom. The beginnings of Doom here, but really Doom doesn't get going as a subgenre of metal until you get to the third album. So totally slow and drudgy and sludgy in many areas. And then you get, of course, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Volume 4, other way around in order, and the journey continues, so to speak. So Tony Iommi, the grandfather of the heavy metal riff, again, Ward, a jazz drummer in a rock band, Geezer Butler, one of the chief songwriters, and what a great bass player. So yeah, have to include Black Sabbath here, one of my favorite bands, and this is one of my favorite lineups of all time. Next, perhaps another obvious choice for many of you, I have to include Led Zeppelin here, another one of my favorite bands. Of course, the band breaks up because of Bonham's death, and many of us talk about this, how some bands out there, you just can't replace a band member, and I'm so glad that they didn't. Of course, Bonham's son comes in to step up for a few small occasions, but not doing any new material, thank goodness. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, Plant on vocals, Page on guitar, that electric dynamite resonance that these two bring together. And of course, Bonham and Jones, the backbeat, the rhythm section. Jones, the glue that keeps the band together in so many ways. Bonham, the thunderous powerhouse that he is. And Page again and Plant are just electric. Page and Plant are to Zeppelin what, in many ways, McCartney and Lennon are for the Beatles. All right, next is Deep Purple. Perhaps their heaviest album. Borderline. This is proto-metal, borderline heavy metal because of songs like Speed King, Bloodsucker, Flight of the Rat, Into the Fire. A lot of screaming, right, from Gillan with his wonderful vocals in his prime here, or pre-prime but approaching his prime. Just great stuff here. So the Mark II version of Deep Purple is one of my favorite lineups. I love the Coverdale lineup with Blackmore and then later with Bolan, but this is my choice today. Have to include, again, Gillan, Blackmore, Lord, Pace, and Glover. Just a wonderful treat, starting with this album and then through and including Perfect Strangers. There's some stuff after that, but this is just the wonderful part of the band in their discography. Can't get enough of it. So Deep Purple, Mark II. Next is Uriah Heep. So here's an example of the lineup, talking about Byron and Box, of course, Kerslake, Hensley, and Thane. So you get this album, then this album, this wonderful album, and then a little falling off with the fourth and final album with this lineup. But I'm very fond of this. I still think this is a very good album. Not a great album, but a very good album. So what can you say about, I want to call him Lord Byron at times because I'm a big fan of Lord Byron's poetry, but David Byron, taking the stage name from Lord Byron, the last name, of course. Unique vocal stylings. Mick Box, an underrated guitarist, unfortunately, but I guess what matters is that if you enjoy Box and he's one of your favorite guitarists, I guess that's all that matters. Kerslake and Thane making up the rhythm section. What a treat, what a powerhouse these two were. One of the best rhythm sections in all of rock and roll and hard rock and metal for that matter, even though they're not a metal band, and very progressive too at times. Thane's one of my favorite bass players of all time. There's just a certain tone that he gives that's unlike no other bass player on the planet. And what can you say about Ken Hensley on Hammond organ and acoustic guitar, especially Hammond organ? The stuff, the unique sound, similar to John Lord, but so different. Just an amazing talent that all five of them have to include the short 4-album lineup. Again, Uriah Heep. Next is Genesis, the 70s lineup, the Gabriel era. So Peter Gabriel on vocals, Phil Collins on drums and vocals, Mike Rutherford on bass and guitar, Tony Banks on keys and synths, and Hackett, the wonderful Steve Hackett, on guitar. My favorite member of the band. Love his solo work. There's nothing like the majesty and epicness and grandiosity, if that's a word, of this band's majesty or majestic flavorings, dealing with subject matters that are very cerebral. The wonderful touches and fugues and resonance and spirit that Tony Banks lends to the band on Firth of Fifth and just so much more. Firth of Fifth being my favorite song, and of course Steve Hackett melding his guitar with what Banks is doing on that piece. Just a beautiful track. The epic Supper's Ready, the epics The Fountain of Salampsis, the Giant Hogweed, Nursery Crime, and Foxtrot are just amazing. I wish there was more in the discography of this lineup, but we have to accept what we have, and it's just a wonderful part of the discography, the best part of the discography. So again, Gabriel, Collins, Rutherford, Banks, and Hackett. All right, next is Pink Floyd. Most recent release, if you will, the re-release of, well, actually, first-time release if you consider this was the first time you could get it by itself, not in a box set. But yeah, talk about epic track goodness with the lineup here that is post. Sid Barrett. So you have Waters, Gilmore, Wright, and Mason. And make of it what you will, the discord between Waters and Gilmore that exists still today, unfortunately, when they were in the band, despite their disagreements and differences, and Waters taking over around the Wall era, if you will, really Animals, you could argue. There's just something like like Genesis, but in a different way because the music is so different. The psychedelic rock stuff post Barrett, even though the first 2 albums are psychedelic as well. Just a marvel to put headphones on or not and just take it all in. Songs like Echoes and A Saucer Full of Secrets. Some of the soundtrack stuff is wonderful. Hey, Bowie, my cat's down here looking for pets and loves. Of course, Dark Side of the Moon, one of the best albums of all time. Psychedelic rock, progressive rock, prog rock, whatever you want to call it. Just a marvel of an album. Animals, my favorite. 3 songs, but pulling a Yes, 5 songs because of the intro and the outro. 5 songs, but very similar to Yes, because you have really, aside from those short and sweet Pigs on the Wing 1 and 2, you really just have 3 tracks that seal the deal, and they're honing their craft and focusing on not a whole lot of songs, but a lot of material within those songs, if you will. So just dogs, pigs, and sheep, and then The Wall. Some people have changed their mind about The Wall and have kind of shied away from it, and they don't like it as much as they used to. I'm still in love with The Wall so much, not so much with the follow-up, but it's more of a Roger Waters album. In many ways, The Wall is too, but at least he gets a full contribution from his bandmates for The Wall, unlike the final cut where Waters is really digging his heels in, and essentially the other 3 members are just simply, even though it's called Pink Floyd, a backup, they're his backup band, so to speak. But yeah, the Pink Floyd's main, well, let me say it this way, the part about Pink Floyd that gets me going is just the light and shade, but not in a Zeppelin way. You have these epic tracks, or not epic tracks, but just this wonderful moments of finesse and touches where you're heavy here and then you're light and soft, kind of like a band I'm going to talk about later, but they're so different sound-wise. But you have this wonderful blend of finesse and then loudness, and then soft-spoken vocals from Gilmour, and then the harshness of Waters when he comes in. If you look at Dogs for a minute, 2/3 of it sung by Gilmour, that soft-spoken voice we love, and then when Waters comes in, it's a little more gritty and edgy, and that combination is just so delightful. So you got Pink Floyd. Next is a one and done, because this is the only album the 5 members appear on, and that's King Crimson's Larks, Tongues, and Aspic. You have David Cross, Robert Fripp, John Wetton, Bill Bruford, and Jamie Muir. We know Fripp is guitars, etc., and Mellotron and devices. Wetton, bass and vocals. Bill Bruford coming over from Yes on drums. Jamie Muir on percussion and what's called all sorts. He had the penciled mustache thing going on. David Cross on violin, viola, and Mellotron. Just a treat to have. The Wetton era is my favorite, and this is my favorite album in that trilogy with the Wetton, regarding the Wetton era. Instrumental goodness here, and then you have songs with vocals that are just delightful, soft and heavy, and the combination. This, trying to remember what critic referred to the Wetton era as a progressive rock version of Black Sabbath. They can be heavy at times, including their next 2 albums, but the heaviness of Larks, Tongues, and Aspic, the title track, is just mind-blowing. When I first heard it, I was just like, hey, boy. I was just like, wow. And this is where I came in, and I've been hooked ever since. Yeah, what a great lineup. You have Larks, Tongues, and Aspic Part 1, and Larks, Tongues, and Aspic Part 2 as the bookends, and then you have Book of Saturday, Exiles, and Easy Money, the Talking Drum, everything, which is in between everything. Those 2, 1973, great album. Yeah, and wonderful lineup, despite being a one and done. Of course, I wanted Muir and Cross to stay in the band. One of them does. I forget which one does for the next album. I think it's Cross, and then Cross is gone on Red. So, anywho, next, also a one and done, Rainbow, the Rising album here. We have Blackmore, of course, and Dio, the wonderful Cozy Powell on drums, Tony Carey on keys and synths, and Jimmy Bain on bass, who will later show up on Dio's Holy Diver record and a couple after that. Unfortunately, a one and done. I've talked about this album before on the channel. You only have 6 tracks. Dio was a bigger fan of the debut. That's in one of his interviews with a real grainy video. He's sitting on the bus, and you have the digipacks he's going through and talking about each one in turn, the first 3 albums and maybe the live album. And he talks about how side 2 is too bloated, but for many of us, side 2 is the best part of the album. I like it from beginning to finish, from start to finish. Tarot Woman, Run with the Wolf, Starstruck, Do You Close Your Eyes, Stargazer, and A Light in the Black. A great way to end the album. That's a heavy song. I've heard it's been played live, but I don't see any videos of it posted anywhere. But I'll take people's word for it. So you have the epic track, A Light in the Black at 8:12, and of course Stargazer is an epic track, almost 8.5 minutes. Everything else is under 6 minutes. But yeah, a great album. What could have been right? A wonderful, wonderful lineup. Wish there was more. Next, also a one and done. Whitesnake sliding in. The U.S. lineup. Okay, let me talk about this briefly. You have Coverdale, of course. You have Cozy Powell. Just talked about him a minute ago on the previous record. Neil Murray on bass. John Lord, keys. Mel Galley on guitar, and John Sykes on the U.S. version. It's heavier than the UK version, which is bluesy, harking back, or consistently rather, staying with the bluesy stuff that came before. What's interesting is you get the best of both worlds. You can have your cake and eat it too sometimes, folks, because if you want a bluesy version of this record, you stick with the UK, and I do listen to that one as well. That consistency, but then you want something that segues into what's to come with the Whitesnake 87 and the Slip of the Tongue era. This is it, the US version. So yeah, again, like the previous Rainbow album, if only, this had kept going. Mel Galley hurts himself, I forget how, and so he leaves the band. But you have Gambler, Slide It In, Slow and Easy, Love Ain't No Stranger, Give Me More Time, etc., Spit It Out, Guilty of Love, love songs, heavy and light, light and shade. Some of them are just thunderous, like Slide It In and Slow and Easy, very Zeppelin-esque, perhaps, as some critics have pointed out. This could have been Led Zeppelin had Bonham not died in the future. This album really cheesed off Robert Plant from what I've heard, because he thought they were imitating him, and him and Zeppelin, he didn't like it. I love it. So, anyway, Whitesnake, the Slide It In US version. All right. Now, my favorite album from this next band is a one and done, but I'm not including that lineup here. It would be if I did, 21 favorite lineups. But favorite lineup is the Fragile and Close to the Edge lineup. Okay, you have Anderson, Buford, Howe, Squire, and Wakeman. So it's a paradox. My favorite Yes album is Relayer, but this is my favorite lineup. Had Moraz been in the band for a longer stretch, past Relayer in the tour or tours, and they put out some studio stuff, I probably would go with that lineup. But for whatever reason, I did it with Whitesnake, I did it with Rainbow Rising, but for some reason I can't do it here. But let's start with Chris Squire. Amazing bass player, my second favorite bass player of all time after someone I'm going to mention later. Steve Howe's a delight. Great on acoustic and electric guitar, whether he's playing a Gibson or a Strat or a Telecaster. Rick Wakeman, keyboards, wonderful here, and on Fragile. Bill Bruford, of course, in King Crimson as well. And John Anderson, wonderful vocal stylings. No one sounds like him, which makes it great. Soft-spoken and yet so powerful and dynamic, if that makes sense. Produced by Eddie Oford, this album is, as much of the the classic lineup, or classic lineups, excuse me. But again, the Fragile and Close to the Edge, my favorite lineup. Fragile is a wonder because you have light and shade. You have the thunderous opening of Heart of the Sunrise. You have acoustic masterpieces, touches here from How here as well. And what's great about Fragile is it's what I like to see sometimes, or what I like to hear sometimes, is when the band showcases its individual talents sort of by having certain songs be mostly about them, if that makes sense. So you have the song Fish, which is, Squire. Everyone's, of course, playing, but it's a focus on that particular person's musical showcase, if you will. This is, like Relay, are just 3 songs, but what a great album it is. Despite being 3 songs, you have the wondrous opening heaviness of Close to the Edge, just thunderous at first, and the wizardry on the instruments is amazing. Of course, you have the lush birds at first, so it's that light and shade, and then it comes full circle, as so much prog is wont to do. And then, of course, you have the wonderful, wonderful songs, And You and I, lovely and acoustic and soft, and a little bit of more, less orchestrated, and a little bit of rock, but more orchestrated than flat out rock music. And then you get the bluesy-ish, quasi-bluesy-ish song, Siberian Khatru. Great album, great lineup. Okay. Next, switching gears to a different genre of rock, is Motorhead. Lemmy, Clark, and Taylor, the best lineup of the band. Perhaps their magnum opus, starting with the debut. Then you have On Parole, not necessarily in this order, Bomber, Iron Fist, this one. Then, things break up because Clark doesn't want to do Stand By Your Man, so we're told that's why he left, and forms Fastway. But yeah, there's nothing. The Overkill is a great album. I left that one out. This is a wonderful lineup. This is them in their prime. Again, the opening album, the debut album, through and including the last album with this lineup. So yeah, Motorhead, just great. Whether you want to call them a rock and roll band like Lemmy did, or a heavy metal band, or a punk band as Lemmy did, yes, yes, and yes. So Motorhead. Next is the Beatles. I don't have anything on CD or vinyl, just MP3, but this is a obvious choice. But I do love the Beatles. I've spoken about them quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 months, here and there. Paul McCartney and John Lennon, the duo of singer-songwriter wonders, if you will, geniuses, excuse me. Paul McCartney, the real leader of the band, because he was the one always pushing the other 3 to keep going. We know that story, or most of us, or many of us do. But John Lennon's just as amazing as McCartney in so many ways, but McCartney's a little bit more amazing because he's pushy in a good way. And George Harrison, an underrated guitar player, he comes into his own around the Rubber Soul era, maybe a little earlier, that in the band's getting him to agreeing to put some of his songs on albums, thank goodness. And Ringo, what can you say about Ringo? I think he's underrated. So many more drummers, in my humble opinion, are better than him, but to me, there's something charming about Ringo. Sit down if you're a drummer, if you're starting to play the drums, sit down and try to play Ringo. It's not as easy as you might think it is. Okay, so the Beatles, have to include them, whether you're talking about their earlier stuff, Would Please Please Me, and the soundtrack stuff, Help, and what have you, but it's really the later stuff for me that really gets my motor running. Revolver, Rubber Soul, not necessarily in this order, the White Album, just the Beatles, Abbey Road, and the Beatles, or the White Album, my 2 favorite albums. I love Let It Be. I think some people poop on it. There's a couple songs that I would say are slightly above mediocre, but overall I think the album is just wonderful, but it's just my opinion. I'm not going to put I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say people are wrong. It's their opinion, and I have to respect that, unlike some people. But yeah, I don't get upset when people say that Let It Be is not as good, but I'm sorry, I'm rambling here. But yeah, overall, Let It Be, I think, is close to being it's a very good album. It's close to being a great album. Just a couple songs, they had tweaked them a little bit, it would be even better. So sorry about my little rambling there, but I love the Beatles, so I have to include them here. Next is the Rolling Stones, the Mick Taylor era. So we're talking about Exile on Main Street, my second favorite, Sticky Fingers, Goat's Head Soup, Let It Bleed, and It's Only Rock and Roll. Just some wonderful chops from Mick Taylor. Again, another example of it's too bad that Mick Taylor left the band, but I get why he left, because Jagger and Richards are so controlling, for good or for ill. Make of that what you will. So the Stones, Mick Taylor era, 5 albums only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, but still in the rock genre. A little glam proto-metal here. The Silver and Black era from Kiss. So we're talking Ace, Paul, Peter, and Gene. Starting with the debut, then Hotter Than Hell. Much better than a debut production-wise, but the songs on the first are just as good as the second album. And then in the third effort, in Dress to Kill, all 3 of these albums, production failures, because Casablanca Records did a wonderful job with Donna Summer and disco, but failed miserably to get good rock-sounding music for whatever reason. This is their magnum opus, part studio, part... Well, it's live, but it was touched up in the studio. Still a live album to me. This is where I came in. This is their magnum opus, as I said. Then you get Destroyer, a little falling off. Then there's a return to form with Rock and Roll Over, and a little bit return to form, though it's inconsistent, with Love Gun. Then you get the solo albums, and then you get, and that's it. You get the 2 albums that aren't so good, which are the Music from the Elder and Unmasked, and of course Dynasty. But the problem with Dynasty is, well, Peter's on. All 4 members are on it, but Peter's not on every track. But I'm still counting it. Ace isn't on. I don't think the Elder fully. Can't count Creatures of the Night because Ace is not on that, nor is Peter. But so essentially, the first album through and including the Elder. But those last 2, there's only a couple songs I like, but it is part of that Silver and Black era, although Dynasty's more of the colored era with the green, the blue, the sienna, and the purple for Paul, those colors. But the Silver and Black eras, where it's at, greatest hits live, essentially, is what this is. How can you go wrong with if you're a Kiss fan, with songs like Do Strutter, Got to Choose, Parasite, She, of course, 100,000 Years, Black Diamond, Rock Bottom, Let Me Go Rock and Roll All Night, and Party Every Day. Kiss is just part of my DNA growing up. I was introduced to them in 3rd grade, so I'm 9 years old, and I never looked back. The Silver and Black era, as it's called sometimes by others, I didn't make up that phrase, but it's a wonder. I'm going to listen. It's Thanksgiving Day when I'm recording this, and then I'm heading off to go to dinner, but this is just. I sometimes I'm at a loss for words how great this album is and this lineup is. It's just they're a beast live, and despite the failed recordings, it's made up for with this and Rock and Roll Over. I think the Dynasty album is pretty damn good. Despite that, it's got some disco on it. And what's wonderful about the Dynasty record is you have a wonderful Stones cover that Ace sings, 2000 Man, and you have Peter on 2 or 3 songs, as you have Ace on at least 2. Paul does a wonderful job on the 3 R&B stylings or disco. The disco song, of course, is I Was Made for Loving You. You get the R&B stylings of Magic Touch and Sure Know Something, which I think are very powerful. The Gene stuff is okay. Charisma and X-Ray Eyes, maybe not okay. But overall, I love this album, Dynasty. And though so different from the Beatles, thank goodness, Beatles are a much better band from an integrity standpoint and singer-songwriter point in so many levels. But there's something wonderful about Kiss, just from a different standpoint. The Beatles are never cheesy. The Kiss can be, but there's something heavy about Kiss that I just love and I gravitate towards it. So I have to include them here. And like the Beatles, as I was going to mention, I'll mention it now, is you have 4 guys who all take turns at vocals. Love it. I wish there was more of that. So Kiss. All right, next, switching gears. This is the only band in the whole 20 I'm going to talk about that is part of the rock and roll umbrella, but so different. Noise, experimental rock band, Swans. The Seer / To Be Kind / Glowing Man era. Those 3 albums. This is what's called the vinyl trilogy, even though you can get it on CD. So let me talk about the band members. All these band members, in addition to what I'm going to say here, have so many other things that they do musically and instrument-wise, but here's the rundown. Michael Gira, the heart and soul of the band, vocals, acoustic and electric guitar, harmonica, etc. Christopher Hahn, lap steel guitar, amazing, electric guitar, vocals. Thor Harris, drums, percussion, piano, hammered dulcimer, violin. He does other things. Chris, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Chris Pravdika, bass and vocals. Then Phil Puleo, drums, percussion, hammered dulcimer, vocals. Norman Westberg, amazing guitarist in his own right, electric guitars, vocals. Bill Rieflin, piano, organ, guitar, drums, synths, bass, vocals. And that's just the beginning of his laundry list of instruments. This is a wonderful band. This is their magnum opus, if you ask me. But you have songs like Lunacy, the title track, Seer, which is an epic 32-minute and 13-second song. The Wolf, very short and sweet, Mother of the World. The Seer Returns, 6 and change. 93 Avenue B Blues, The Daughter Brings the Water. Then Disc 2, Song for a Warrior, Avatar, A Piece of the Sky, and which is a 19-minute plus change epic track. And then The Apostate, also an epic 23 minutes and 1 second. So yeah, this is just a marvel of a band. Throughout their career, you have, and including here, you have hints of, well, this album, you have hints of everything they've done up to and including this album, because there is some stuff here that's much different from before, but it includes, little pieces or some pieces of what came before, perhaps with the exception of The Glowing World. So you have the heavy stuff here from the early phase. You have the, even though Gerbeau's not in the band, you have some Gerbeau type music here, not her vocals though. You have the keys and synths kind of thing going on here. That's rivals and similar to that. Not exactly, not as good as Gerbeau, but close. But despite that Gerbeau's not here, still my favorite album because all the finesse of some touches of their Tangerine Dream stylings that you have. You have the light and shade. You just have so many things going on. This war between the angels and demons sounds, again, that's that light and shade stuff, where you have moments of clarity and peace and quiet. Musically, it's soft and angelic, and then you get this thundering, pounding notes and chords, and noise rock galore. It's just a marvel. So, Swans. All right, let's see. Next, Metallica, because of these 3 albums. The debut, my favorite. Ride the Lightning, my second favorite. Master of Puppets, and it's because of Cliff Burton. If only Cliff Burton were still around, what would Metallica sound like? We'll never know. But when you have songs like Battery, Master of Puppets, Welcome Home, Disposable Heroes, Orion, a great instrumental, Damage Incorporated, Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Wonderful Soft, Fade to Black, Creeping Death, heavy as all, The Call of Cthulhu, great instrumental, and then this from start to finish is great. Hit the Lights, The Four Horsemen, Whiplash, Phantom Lord, No Remorse, Seek and Destroy, Metal Militia, my favorite tracks of all time, are on here. But these 3 albums are just amazing in their own right. So Hetfield, Hammett, Ulrich, and Burton, one of the greatest lineups of all time. Too bad they couldn't stick with that heaviness, and they unload that once they get to the Black Album, the 5th album. Next is Judas Priest. Like Uriah Heep, just 4 albums in this particular lineup. I'm talking about Halford, Hill, Tipton, Downing, and Dave Holland on drums. It starts with this, Les Banks leaves after Hellbent for Leather, or Killing Machine as it was called in the UK, and you get some heavy stuff here in Rapid Fire, Metal Gods, Grinder, and then The Rage and Steeler. But then you have some more less heavy stuff in Breaking the Law, then United, the anthem, and then You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise, and then Living After Midnight. Okay, British Steel. Then you get one of the greatest side A's in of all rock music, Heading Out to the Highway, Don't Go, Hot Rockin', Turning Circles, and then the love ballad, Desert Plains. Then you get a little proggy on side 2 with Solar Angels, and then the worst part of the album, All the Way, Troubleshooter, and On the Run. Not bad songs, but not great either. So, Point of Entry. Then their magnum opus for me. This is where I came in, Screaming for Vengeance. The amazing Goose Pimpley, the Hellion / Electric Eye. Then the amazing drums from Holland that begins Riding on the Wind, Bloodstone to follow. Take These Chains, an amazing power ballad, heavy and soft at the same time. Halford's vocals are inspired through and through, but here as well. Pain and Pleasure, my least favorite song, but I do like it quite a bit. My favorite song in here, the title track, so heavy, of Halford singing in that high register the whole way. Proto thrash metal, if not thrash metal in its own right. You've got Another Thing Coming, the hit, right? Fever and Devil's Child, amazing, amazing record. And then Defenders of the Faith, also produced by Tom Allom, like the previous album. Free Will Burning, Jawbreaker, Rock Hard, Ride Free, and The Sentinel. A 1, 2, 3, 4 punch. Love Bites, it's good, not great. Eat Me Alive, good, not great. But then Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, Night Comes Down. Great back-to-back tracks. Night Comes Down is a wonderful power ballad. I love it. Heavy Duty and Defenders of the Faith, kind of doing what they do here. Here you have an intro to Electric Eye and the Hellion, all instrumental, the Hellion. Here you have, both songs have lyrics, but Heavy Duty is really an introduction to Defenders of the Faith because it's so short and sweet like the Hellion, but you don't open the album that way, you end it, so genius if you ask me. So, Judas Priest, those 4 albums, Halford, Hill on bass, Tipton and Downing, of course, and Holland on drums. Next is UFO. Only 2 albums with this lineup, Phenomenon and Force It. Okay, you have Moog, Schenker, Way, and Parker. They're 2 best albums in my estimation. Let's see. Oh My, Crystal Light, Doctor, Space Child, Rock Bottom. Can't get any better than that. Too Young to Know, Time on My Hands. You get a little softer, more acoustic stuff on side 2. Built for Comfort, the Willie Dixon cover is great. Lipstick Traces is really just an instrumental introduction to Queen of the Deep, which is just phenomenal. Pun intended, phenomenal. Then side 1 of Force It, Let It Roll, Shoot, High Flyer, nice power ballad. Love, Lost Love, Out in the Street, Mother Mary, so heavy, so great lyrics. Too Much of Nothing, Dance Your Life Away, This Kids, and Between the Walls. What a great album. Both of these albums are fabulous. All right. So UFO, 2 left, folks. Have to include this. Talking about the band Sweet. Talking about the Brian Connolly years. Okay. Live at the Beeb. Okay. Steve Priest, Brian Connolly, and the rest of the names are eluding me. Great photos of the band in this box set. If you can find this, I don't think it's in print anymore, but if you can get the Brian Connolly years box set, you got to get it, find it, pay for it, right? It's so worth the money. You have their 2 heavy albums in Desolation Boulevard and Give Us a Wink, and then parts of I'm talking about the UK version of Desolation Boulevard. There's some heavy songs on this too. Of course, I like the bubblegum stuff as well. I even love different album, the pop stuff on here. Love Is Like Oxygen, of course. Cover Girl, a bonus track that was a B-side to something. I used to have that, Capitol Records. Yeah, so here we go. Brian Connolly, Steve Priest, Andy Scott on guitar, and Mick Tucker on drums. Yeah, I think only Andy's with us now, and everyone else has passed away, which is a shame, of course. Yeah, I love this album. This original artwork that I had on vinyl as a kid growing up in high school. Got made fun of in high school for liking this band. I don't care. Got made fun of in high school for liking Uriah Heep as well. They weren't cool enough, according to my friends. But what do they know? To each his own, right? Okay, so let me talk a little bit more about this band, because when you have three different versions of Desolation Boulevard, you got to get all three, because you'll miss out on songs like Turn It Down, Medusa, Lady Starlight, Breakdown, the Who cover My Generation. This is amazing because of the heavy songs, Action and Yesterday's Rain and Healer. Healer has almost a Zeppelin quality musically, but not vocally. Brian Connolly's voice is a treasure. This is a band in my top 10, one of the first, if not the first video I ever did when I started this channel, my 10 favorite bands of all time. Then you get a little punk, little bit of punk sounding here on this album with the song, where is it? Live for Today, Don't Need No Politician. So I could see the Sex Pistols doing the song. I could see the Clash doing it. I could see the Buzzcocks. I could see the Damned doing it. It has a punk vibe to it. So yeah, and then of course the bubblegum stuff. I hit the mic again. Sorry, I do that sometimes. The poppy bubblegum stuff I still love from the early stuff. And finally, last but not least, one of my favorite lineups of all time is Rush. How can you go wrong in buying this, right? If you're a Rush fan, this is a must-own. I think it's out of print. I think people are selling this for like anywhere between $300 to $600. But let's talk about Rush for a minute. I love the debut album, but that's not the lineup we're talking about here. We're talking about Peart, as I showed you, Peart, Lee, and Lyson, right? You get it on every album except one. What does it say? Music by Lee and Lyson, lyrics by Peart. Let's start with Peart. My favorite drummer of all time, the maestro himself. That last appearance on David Letterman, I think it was a couple years before he passed, was just dynamite. I owe a debt to Letterman for putting Neil on the show with his entire drum kit, right? I missed that show because of the music and Letterman and Paul's presence, right? And the jokes and everything. But seeing Neil play his drum kit on that was a delight. Sad story, but he's left us, the band has left us, and of course Neil himself, a marvel of music to listen to and treasure and cherish. Okay. My favorite drummer, John Bonham, would be second. So he brings to the table, he jazzed things up with the band. Fly By Night comes out, hey, let's jazz things up, okay? You hear it on so many tracks. You hear it on Cygnus X1, okay? That is a jazz fusion piece in so many ways, right? If not downright all jazz fusion. So he jazzes things up, thank goodness. Geddy Lee, my favorite bass player of all time. He's not just someone in the background, in the backbeat, just going with the flow. Like Chris Squire, like other bass players, not many, but you have the bass player who is up front and center, literally and musically, and resonating. Okay, he is an integral part of the band. He is doing things on the bass that no one has ever done before, with the exception of being inspired by Chris Squire, but then taking it into his own purview or direction or area or arena. Okay, inspired by Chris, but then moving on from it, he uses Chris as a jumping point. Chris Squire was a very inspirational player for Lee, as Lee has told us so many times. Okay, and he even played with Yes when they were introduced, put into the Hall of Fame, right? Because Squire unfortunately had passed on. So Lee's is an amazing talent. Keyboards as well, but bass for me is where it's at mostly with when it comes to Lee. Songs like La Via Strangiato, so many things with Geddy Lee. His connection, everything here I'm mentioning today is about chemistry and synergy, and this band has it in spades. Both of them. You need both. Okay? Swans is the same way in that era, in so many things in other bands. But Rush, perhaps the best band when it comes to, along with the Beatles, when it comes to synergy and chemistry. I would say Rush even more so because there was fighting in the Beatles, and you don't hear that so much, if at all, with Rush. I'm sure there was some things behind the closed doors, but you don't hear about it anyway. That's kept secret, perhaps. But it's very important to recognize the synergy and chemistry in the rhythm section, how they play off each other. I'll get to Alex in a minute, because that's coming. But Geddy, kind of like Lemmy, taking the bass guitar, and it's not a side instrument. It's not, it's on equal footing with the guitarist and the drums. So Geddy, great instrumentation from Lee. Alex, my favorite guitarist of all time. I've spoken about that before, one of my first videos. Who is my favorite guitarist and why? Check it out if you'd like to. Alex brings to the table so many different touches. Okay, he can play fast and shred, like that intro part that he does to La Via Strangiato. He can play bluesy. He can play heavy metal. Think of even though they don't call it that, think of the guitar solo on the fourth part of 2112. Anyway, it's eluding me. Even I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to do a video on this. Even if you listen to Grace Under Pressure, Alex is a nonconformist because they're not heavy anymore. And yet Alex, although his sound is so different, he's still playing. If Andy Summers was a heavy metal guitarist, he's playing Andy Summers type guitar because of the new pedals he's brought and gotten rid of the old ones, but it's still heavy as all. You know what? Different heavy, still heavy. I'm going to do a video on that down the road, if not sooner than later. So Alex, he brings touches of jazz fusion, classical type guitar, flamenco type guitar, again, heavy blues, heavy, think By Torn and the Snow Dog, whether live or especially the studio track. He out-Clapton's Clapton. That guitar solo on By Torn and Snow Dog is just amazing. You can see him with his head back. He's just going to town. It's just, wow. The stuff that he does on Caress of Steel is amazing. Everything he does, or almost everything he does, is amazing. Okay, whatever style he's into. Whether he's doing the grunge stuff on Counterparts, the jazz fusion stuff on the opening track on Presto, Show Don't Tell, and his classical stuff, his acoustic stuff on Farewell to Kings, his heavy stuff, his progressive stuff on Moving Pictures, and it's all progressive, and much of it's progressive, but the different type of the 80s progressive stylings or late 70s stylings of Hemispheres, Permanent Waves, and Moving Pictures. So yeah, wonderful guitarist, my favorite guitarist, because no one sounds like him, inspired by Jimmy Page and others, and Cream and what have you, and Hendrix, but he makes it his own like Geddy does with the bass from Squire, and Peart being inspired by The Who's original drummer Keith Moon, but making it his own. So yeah, what a great band. So these are my favorite lineups of all time. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, hopefully for the next video. Bye now. Take care.